Well, hello everyone. Welcome back. Welcome to the Writers Bloc Podcast. And I am so pleased to welcome Rose Jordan again to our podcast. She was with us earlier. Was it the spring, Rose? It wasn't
I think
that
it was
long
like
ago.
February.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So we're so excited to have you back. And she is going to talk to us about a topic we have not covered yet here on the Writer's Block. And I'm really interested to learn more from you. We're going to talk about how to write a compelling one sheet. But before we do that, Rose, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you live, kind of what you do in the writing world.
Well, I live in not too far from Dallas, Fort Worth. It's a little town called Mineral Wells, about an hour west of Fort Worth. Really nice, small, rural town in hill, kind of the North Texas hill country. And until about what, 4 days ago, I was the director of tourism for about 7 years here. Loved the work, but also have been really grateful for God to provide a season where I can step away from full-time work and focus more on the ministry and the calling that he's given me here, and then even just to some time to breathe. But my writing is all under beneath the fig tree, and everything that I do there is aimed at helping women cultivate their devotional life in a way that they actually really love. And so it's designed around the way that God made them uniquely so that they can relate with him uniquely and then really enjoy scripture and journaling and time with him. But what else about me? So my husband and I have been married. September will be 31 years, and we are park
Congrats.
hosts. I don't know if everybody knows what that means, but we are park hosts at our state park here in Mineral Wells. And so we bought an RV just to go do that. We live on the state park properties, and we're assigned to one of the rangers, and we help with the different programs and guided hikes and those kinds of things. So we have that and we love it, which is part of the reason that I'm able to step away from full-time work. And then aside from that, we have a son who just turned 30 and a new daughter-in-law. I say new, they've been married about almost 2 years. October will be 2 years, but she still feels really new to us. We love her. But yeah, that's kind of my world in a nutshell.
Oh, that's so fun. That's so cool. Well, we're glad that you have a little more space in your schedule and in your writing to pursue the things that really fuel your love for others and God's word. So that's really cool. So we're going to talk about a one sheet today, and I'm just going to let you answer the question. What is a one sheet?
So we're all really familiar with the proposal. If you are thinking about writing a book at all, whether you're going traditional publishing or hybrid, you've probably thought about a proposal. It's this massive document. Mine for the one sheet, I'll actually show you in the workshop the one sheet that I submitted that got the request for my proposal. That proposal was 29 pages plus the 3 sample chapters. So it finished out at 60 pages. So we're all usually familiar with the proposal. Well, the one sheet is a highly condensed. It's pulling out the highlight reels from the proposal that are fit on one page, front and back, or just front. I have been told that front and back is acceptable, and the one I submitted was. And so it's if you think of the proposal as the full conversation, a full business plan, then your one sheet is kind of like an invitation to coffee. Let's
Mhm.
just chat a little bit. And so it's the handshake that can kind of open the door. If it's done well and you're in front of the right audience, that one sheet can spark enough interest and tell enough about your book project to compel a publisher, acquisitions editor, agent to pursue the conversation further.
So is it similar to the idea of a resume? Is it a little bit more like high level, but like the resume is like the book, right? You're telling
Right,
the story of the book versus
right.
the story of yourself as the writer. You're telling the high level points about what this book is about and who it's for and that kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Very simple.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's helpful just to kind of put a comparison in our minds of like what that looks like. So I have been told, and I've written a book proposal too, so I have my own experience with it, that you should plan, about 100 hours of work for a book proposal. So you would probably go through all of that blood, sweat, and tears of creating that proposal first, and then from there pulling out the highlight reels, as you said, for the
Mhm.
one sheet. So when you got to creating the one sheet for yourself, was that a much quicker process? Were you able to, like, your thinking was, you were probably very clear on what the message of your book was by that point. So your one sheet was probably a quicker, much quicker process.
It is, and I'll be honest, the only reason that I did the one sheet is I was part of another writing membership, and they were offering a publishing week where you had appointments. And so they told you then that some of the publishers or some of the people that you would meet with would want proposals and others would want one sheets. So I had been working on my proposal because you didn't know for a while who you were going to meet with. And so I had been working on the proposal, but I hadn't completely finished it. And then I found out who I was going to meet with and that they wanted the one sheet. And so I stopped work on that and went to work on the one sheet. So it is for sure quicker, especially if you, yes, if you've already written the proposal. In the ideal world, you write the proposal first and then you do the one sheet. But if you haven't gotten that far, still the ideas that you need to know for the proposal are the things that you need to know. And it is a lot less work because there's not as much, but at the same time, one of the tricks to it is then condensing all of the information down to fit on one sheet of paper, which
Mhm.
seems like which seems like it would be easier, but we're all word people and we know how we love our words. And so sometimes we like to use this many words to tell a thing, but for the one sheet, we've got to pull it down to just this. But yes, if you start with the proposal, the one sheet becomes a whole lot easier. It's just then being able to cull down, pull out just the highlights, not hold, how we are. We love our darlings, so we'll hold on to our words. We really have to edit ourselves down for a one sheet.
Yeah, I would imagine that is a challenge because you do kind of love all of those words, but you can't fit them all on one sheet. And so, just to review, like, this does not replace a proposal. This is kind of, like you said, a business card into the conversation of showing the proposal. So you don't need
Yeah.
to, um, like, you can't neglect the proposal. This is the lead in to the proposal.
Yeah. And if you've ever, so you were talking about an analogy. If you've ever put together an actual business plan, a lot of times as writers, we just do our writing, we do the thing. But if you've ever put together a business plan, it's this big document. It's what you're going to sell and who your market is and how you're going to market to the people and just all of it. What is your operations? What will that look like? What will all the different pieces? And so the analogy then is the business card is the one sheet and the business proposal is a full book proposal, kind of our business plan is a book proposal. So it's like this compared to this. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. So, what can you give us? I know on Thursday, for those who are members of the Writers Block, they're going to have access to you and a teaching of, we're going to see your one sheet. We're going to look at, what yours finished product look like and a template for other writers who want to build their own. But for those who are not in the Writers Block, can you give us some, like, high level
Yeah.
components that you want to include in your one sheet?
Yeah, the elements really are pretty much the same as a proposal. It's subtract out the sample chapters. But then the elements are the same. So your book title and your subtitle, your the summary or the description, the hook, those kinds of things, the felt need, who is your audience, then the brief author bio, and then just kind of a snapshot of what does your platform look like, and then your contact info. Those are the key elements. If you have room, you can also, or if it's really, really important, the comps that you would put in a book proposal, if you have room, you might put those in your one sheet, and then an author headshot, those kinds of things. But yeah, the basics are still the same. Aside from the sample chapters, the things that you would put in your proposal, it's the same elements, just condensed way down for the one sheet. And then you won't really put the marketing plan. With a proposal, you need your marketing plan. You won't really put that in your one sheet. So it's a lot of the same information.
Right, right. So again, you've done the heavy lift already when you've created your proposal. Do you think it's important to include, and I know space would be the factor here, but table of contents so that they can see kind of the flow of the chapters, or is that getting too in the weeds?
Yeah, I think that that is more, I can tell you in all the research that I did when I was trying to figure out how to do this. By the way, there's very little out there. There weren't templates. There wasn't information or guidance on how to create a one sheet for books. So I just kind of figured it out. And then that's how, that's how I landed here, because it's like, if I was looking for it, you guys must be looking for it too. But, um, the table of contents really wouldn't be here because, again, the space is limited. But what would be really important is those value statements. So the felt need, the hook, and the value statements. And a lot of times you can think of the value statements as the back cover, or if you look at an Amazon description and they have kind of those bullet points of what you get with this book, those value statements, that would be a lot more important than the table of contents when it comes to the one sheet.
Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, um, tell us too, like this was something you kind of had to learn by yourself, just getting out there and doing it for your own purposes. But what was the result of your one sheet? Were you at a writers conference when you were
So the
using
way
it?
this particular membership did it, they did online instead of, they shifted away from that model where they had the appointments at the conference and then later did a publishing week where it was Zoom meetings. And so I did have that Zoom meeting. And so I submitted the one sheet before to the publisher, the agent that they assigned me to. And then you never know if they're going to read it beforehand or not. And they told us that. And when I met with the acquisitions agent, she even told me, I saw it, but I haven't really had a chance to look into it. Just tell me about your project. And so then while I shared it with her, she was able to look and see it on the one sheet. But she did, as a result of what was in the one sheet, even though my platform was really small, she asked at the end for the actual proposal, and she made a point to tell me, I wouldn't ask for it if I didn't think there was something here. I'm interested. I'd like to see your full book
Hmm.
proposal. And so then the book proposal, it was a couple of months later because I hadn't finished it yet. So I did the sample chapters was what I still needed to write. So it did yield an actual appointment, and then sent her the book proposal a few months later. And she got back and she said, I really love the concept. I think it's strong. This is a really great project, but we've got to get your numbers up. Platform numbers are not where they need to be. And I wasn't surprised. I wasn't even disappointed. I was really excited to hear the project is viable. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the hard part, right? Is getting that idea locked in and really meeting a need and then building all of the other things as you go. So are you working on this book? Have you gotten a publisher or have you just
I
chosen to
am
move forward?
I am working really hard right now on because I was working full time, I just didn't have the bandwidth to do what they call platform building. But for me, I mean, my heart is to help women cultivate their devotional life. So I really wanted to be more present in the places where we would call platform. I just have the bandwidth. And so I've been really working to increase that and build that. So I do that through podcast and YouTube, and then some through Instagram. So my focus right now is really working. And I do have a coach that I work with. It's another author. And so I'm working on building the platform while I continue working on the book, and then we'll come back once I get those numbers up. But just in the last couple of months, I've really seen a good growth in those numbers. But it's just because I'm finally able to be present because
Right.
my
Yeah.
demands for a full-time job are not what they were. And so yeah, I'm really focused right now on getting the platform thing figured out. But really for me, it's just I just wanted to show up anyway. I just didn't have the time. So I'm working now more to show up and figure out how best to serve my people. And so lots of different ways that we're doing that. But yeah, I am continuing to work. In fact, you can't see it, but right over here on my wall is my book project in chapters where all my sticky notes are so that I've got it
Awesome.
organized. So I am continuing to work on um, after I got the proposal submitted, I came back and breathed a little bit and then realized, there were some things that were really important that I didn't include and some things I could actually take out of just those sample chapters. And so I actually want to rework that a little bit. And then probably I'm working with my coach to kind of decide whether we go back at it this fall or maybe even push a little bit and do it back at the first of the year. So, but yeah, I'm working toward it.
I mean, I love how what you're saying is real life for so many writers, right? It's not always the luxury of full-time pursuit of building a platform. And so sometimes you're doing those things parallel to each other. You're writing your book and building your platform, and you can never just completely lay one aside to focus on the other, right? They usually kind of work in tandem. So yeah, well, that's really cool, Rose. Thanks for sharing that story. Um, do you I, do you think there are specific writing genres that benefit more from a one sheet and some that maybe benefit less?
Yeah, it works both for nonfiction and fiction, but I would say more so for nonfiction because our concept is, we have a pretty solid concept on what we're looking for, what we're planning to do in the book project. Where a lot of times when you're writing fiction, a lot of them will kind of figure it out as they go. And I'm speaking not from experience because I don't write fiction even a little bit, but the ways that you might use it as a fiction author, yes, as a fiction author, if you're doing conferences and those kinds of things and it's kind of your elevator pitch, kind of making those conversations, I could see where you could use it there, especially if you've got the book published now and you want to use it to market it. That could be similar to a flyer, but better, more information and more serious. And so that's to me where I would see nonfiction use it or fiction authors use it more. But for nonfiction, it's when you've got an appointment or you're going to make a formal pitch to an agent or a publisher, those kinds of things. But it is more common for nonfiction than for fiction. Though I will tell you, the very few samples that I ever could find when I was researching to figure out how to do it, they were for fiction books that were already written. And so that was part of the challenge, right? It's like, well, this doesn't really apply to me, not really. So the things were just the elements were a little bit different. So, but it is, yeah, I would say more nonfiction, but it can also be useful for a fiction writer.
Yeah,
If nothing else, for yourself, for the practice of yourself, just kind of honing in the information. Because if you're going to do podcast tours, if you're going to do, marketing or those kinds of things, that one sheet, if for no other reason, is your resource for quick and easy how to share your book.
absolutely. And that whole process of writing your book proposal, and then I'm sure for your one sheet as well, is so clarifying for you as the writer to be able to know exactly. You have to make it clear in your own mind first before you make it clear in a potential agent's mind. So that's really good. Um, so getting into some of the technicalities of writing a one sheet. Since this is this is a quick glance, I'm sure you want to make it look nice. So what kind of tools can you do this kind of thing in Canva? And then what do you think are some of the best practices for that?
Yeah, definitely. Canva, Google Docs, Word, those are all perfect for it. In most cases, you'll submit it as a PDF unless they ask for it in some other way. Getting fancy and clever are not helpful, honestly. The goal here, especially when you think about how brief you need to be, the goal is clarity. Clever just doesn't help here. Also, because you have limited space and a lot of things you need to share, you don't want to be super verbose and you don't want to use a lot of design elements because that real estate on the paper is highly valuable. And so putting design elements, making it fancy and cute and all of the things, it's not going to help you and it's not going to help the publisher understand your book more. So the goal is clarity and brevity. And then to think about clear and concise, but this is a writing sample. If you're handing this to somebody, this is your writing sample too. And in lieu of those like sample pages, you're still showing them how you communicate, how you write. And so being free of grammar errors or spelling errors, that's far more important than all the pretty design work. And again, at the workshop on Thursday, I'll show you. I mean, mine was pretty simple, had one or two small design elements, but a lot of white space. And that is like a huge thing. White space is your friend. It helps the eye know where to focus, but it also shows that um, you have enough confidence and clarity about your book that you're not just cramming all the words on this one sheet page. And it helps them really to see the project, because if you drown them in words, they're not going to understand what your book is about anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, I think sometimes design enhances words and sometimes it detracts.
Mhm.
So you
Yeah.
kind of have to find that balance of where, um, like you mentioned, it helps the eye track where it should go, and good design does that. Good design kind of blends into the background so that it's like a support versus like a distraction. If you don't have the chops inside your one sheet and you want to try and bolster it up with too much design, that can show. So it's good to just kind of keep that balance in mind so that you don't overdo it and don't add all the flowers and emojis and all of that thing stuff that you might be tempted to.
Yeah.
Um, so tell us what so when you give somebody a one sheet, what are some of the like you mentioned it earlier, you kind of have to be prepared with your one sheet to be able to speak to it
Yeah.
clearly. So perhaps like working on an elevator pitch, right? With it, you should be able to speak quickly and concisely about your one sheet. Are there any other tips that you might suggest?
Yeah, in that situation, so my appointment was scheduled for a time that I was going to be in California for a conference. And so the whole ride on the plane, like we know our book project, right? Like we know the heart of the book project, but it's some of those other pieces that are important that we may not have strong. And the other thing too is we do know our book project, but unless we have really worked on it and really read through and really honed down the message, out of nervousness, we're probably going to just dump way too many words verbally also during that appointment. And so the whole flight, my one sheet was ready and I was just going through the information. And then I had some notes my coach and I had worked on. Okay, we want to make sure that we're driving home these points. And so I had read through my one sheet, not just silently, but on a plane, it's great because there's so much hum that nobody can hear you talking. And so on the plane, I was having the conversation in my mind, but out with my voice, on the plane, answering the questions that we thought she would ask, and then really making sure that I had the wording, because if you write your summary, it needs to be 2 to 3 sentences. But again, we know all the things, and when we're not sure where to hone in on, we'll use all the words. So we want to practice really um, going through the key points. What are the most important things? What's the succinct version of the explanation? So that when you're actually having the meeting with this one sheet, it doesn't look like you're totally disconnected and you're handing in somebody else's book project. Like you still want to be able to speak to it succinctly.
Yeah. So good. Yeah, it's not enough, writers. We have to be public speakers too, at least in that one-on-one kind of interaction with an agent or a publisher. So that's really good. Well, Rose, tell us again, tell us a little bit about what we might expect on Thursday.
Yep. So we will walk through the essential elements of the one sheet. We'll talk a little bit about kind of how they're different from a proposal and just kind of see that tangibly. And then we'll talk about some writing tips to use within the project of the one sheet. We'll talk about some design do's and don'ts. And I'll actually do a walkthrough where you'll see the one sheet that I submitted that garnered the request for a full proposal. And then another version that's kind of a dummy version of another project that's not a real project, so you can see. And we'll go through bit by bit for each of the sections of the one sheet, just so you can see it. If you're like me, I'm really visual, like hearing all this is one thing, but actually seeing it in play. So you'll see it, you'll see the design of what mine was. And then I'll even give you a little bit of AI help. So just some suggestions for using AI to help you brainstorm or to tighten up your language. And then at the end, there will be a QR code, and then we'll also share the documents within um, the group. But it'll be a template with some kind of helpful information, some examples, especially of the hook, because I think the hook is one place that a lot of us kind of get stuck. And then some prompts for using AI to help you with your one sheet.
That sounds awesome. That's a complete course right there in creating a one sheet. Have I forgotten anything? Is there anything else important that you think we should add
I
to
don't
this
think so.
conversation? Carrie, do you have any questions or comments?
Um, I'm wondering about like if you know who you're meeting with, finding out what they want, because I took my one sheet to the writers conference that I was at in the spring, and I had one agent look at it and, yeah, that's great, and set it aside, whatever. Another one was like, oh, you need to hone this, and this is too broad, and that kind of stuff. And then the next person I talked to, she looked at it and she says, well, what's wrong with this? This is great. And then I actually had James Scott Bell look at it. That's the only thing of what I wrote he liked. But um, but I feel like everybody had their different opinion about what was really important to be on there. And so kind of determining, who you're going to meet with, and what their expectations are, I think is important. And I'm not quite sure how to do that,
Well,
especially when you
I
like,
actually, no, go ahead. Sorry.
go ahead. No, I think you know where I'm going with it.
Yeah,
So
I do.
go ahead.
I'm really glad that you asked that. So when we submitted last year for this publisher week, they gave us the full list of all the different agents and publisher, all of that were going to be there. And we, needed to go do our homework and figure out which ones would be the best fit for us. And then we gave our top 5. And I can't remember if we had to put them in order or not of preference. But of all the ones that they gave, there were really only 4 that I felt like my project was a good fit for. And so I submitted those, and then I held on to my list and I learned what I could about the publisher or the agent, whoever it was. And so one of the ways that I did that is I looked for anywhere that they were speaking on podcasts, especially if they were going to talk about, their role as an editor and acquisitions or an agent or whatever, because a lot of times they'll tell you, even if they don't explicitly say, this is what I'm looking for, although a lot of them do, you can hear in what they're saying the things that are most important to them. And so it kind of helps you know how to structure. Now, that said, it could have been any of the 5. And so until we got a whole lot closer, I didn't know who it was. And so I had to develop for all of them. But yeah, I did. And then another thing too is, you mentioned like some people will look at it and this is like nothing. Keep in mind too that just because they don't love the one sheet or the proposal, it may not even fit the types of things that they're actively looking for right now. So it's just not interesting to them because it doesn't meet the types of books they're trying to fill right now, because they all have
Sure.
something that they're trying to do right now. They're like, really want books in this area. We really don't want to see books in this area. One of the things that I did on my one sheet, so once I got it done, then I gave it to my coach, who's a published author and works with people. And so I gave it to her, and I had put in my value statements, I think it was in the value statements, I had put one of the things in there, and it kind of touched on um, the lies that we believe about our devotional life. And she said, everybody talks about that, but that's not really what sets your book apart. So let's either, I can't remember if she had me move it down in the one sheet or if she said, let's just take it out. Because in my mind, those value statements, I was putting them in there in order of kind of how they showed up in the book project itself. And
Mm-hmm.
that's not it. So she had me rearrange about what were the key elements, the most um, differentiating elements of my book project. Those were the ones that needed to be up at the top. And then those others really didn't need to be there at all. So we want to like offer all the things that our book has, but really it's the things that set our book apart. But to answer your question, yeah, I did that. And she helped me because I told her, I said, I've been listening to different podcasts from this person, and this seems to be what she's really honing in on. And so will you look at my one sheet with that in mind? And so she made a couple of suggestions. Well, then let's shift this if this is what she's really looking for. let's shift. But that's how I do it. I just looked for
Yeah.
anywhere if they've got blogs, like a lot of
Mhm.
agents, acquisitions editors have blogs. So you can go see, what are they writing about, if they're writing about their acquisitions experience, those kinds of things. If they're on podcasts, if they have a YouTube channel, anywhere that you can hear them talk, either read it or hear about it, is a really good way to just kind of see what they're looking for. And especially contemporary, the newer, the better, because it's what are they looking for now?
Mhm.
So
Yeah. I kind of had the feeling like with a couple of them that they look at these things all the time. They were more interested in what I had to say at the moment. And so that's what you were saying about being practiced and ready to speak about your, your baby is
yeah.
is what was the most important to them. And I get nervous on the spot and stutter and stammer and everything else. And so I practiced and practiced and I still, felt like a blubbering idiot. So
I'm with
Well,
you
and
there.
Carrie, you're also writing a fiction book, right?
yes.
So
Uh-huh.
it is probably some of the high level content areas that you need might be a little different.
Yeah.
Sure, sure. And I mean, I'm James Scott Bell, who's like the fiction, guru. He looked at it, he's like, "Oh wow, this is really good. Who taught you how to do that?" And I'm like, "I figured it out on my own. Thanks, I appreciate that."
Nice.
So I'm like, that was my little badge of honor that I took away.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, and again, I was 27,000 words into the book at that point. I didn't know I was going to be going to the conference until like 3 or 4 days before I went. So I was just like scrambling to get all this stuff done. So I
Yeah.
was not as prepared as I would have liked to have been at that
Yeah.
moment. But I felt like that was like having a resume when you're going to a job fair. You kind of have to have it if
Yeah.
you're really wanting to start looking for the job, so to speak. So
Yeah, and so for fiction writers, the one sheet where nonfiction, we're going to focus on felt need, reader takeaway, platform. With fiction writers, you're emphasizing more plot, genre, themes, character arcs, those kinds of things. So that is one of
mhm,
the ways that a one sheet for fiction would be a little bit different. And so
mhm.
I should probably clarify when we meet on Thursday, I'll actually really focus on what it looks like for a nonfiction writer because I'm not a fiction writer. But yeah, your focus would be a little bit different because you're looking at plot, genre, character arcs, those kinds of things.
Yeah. That'll be great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Rose. This has been really, really insightful, interesting. I do think it's a need in the writing community to learn how to do this. So we are looking forward to learning more from you on Thursday.
I can't wait.
All right. Thank you guys so much. We'll
Okay,
see you on
thank you.
Thursday.
Bye bye.
Bye.